well, I mean, we still want to be men, but how do we be men? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
that's a good question. So then in comes academics and, the intelligentsia and, then you have the feminist agenda and all of these things that start saying, oh, well, don't worry. We'll define how to be men for you. We'll tell you how to do it. And, being a man means sometimes sitting to pee. Sometimes it means being sensitive and, crying in front of your woman. Sometimes being a man means not being afraid to wear pink or put on the dress or paint your nails. Real men aren't, don't worry about that. And then, before you know, it's like, well, real men allow other men to do what they want with their wives because, of course, you're masculine, right? You're secure in your masculinity. And, it just turns into this weird circular sphere of, well, what is a man?
Now, it's the Michele Tafoya podcast.
Malcolm Flex is an interesting guy. And I'm so glad we get to have him on because he and I have been trying to schedule this for months. I'm not kidding, months and months. You can follow him, and we'll tell you this again, on X at Malcolm_Flex48. There are quite a few Malcolm Flexes on X, but he is at Malcolm_Flex48. So as you follow him, also do me a solid and click the subscribe button on this podcast. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, click, follow us. We'd love to have you in the fold and have you never miss an episode because we get these unique interviews with some really cool folks like Malcolm. It's interesting when you read someone's X bio, their little profile, it's sort of like they are writing their epitaph, their tombstone for you in advance. He says, gaming, guns, and gains. He's a heavyweight MMA fighter. He's 6'5", 255. Striking specialist and verbal pugilist. He will prove that all to you. Fascinating man. You're going to want to hear the whole thing. Stay tuned for Malcolm Flex. I know so many people who have trouble sleeping, whether it's the stress of current events, the stress of their life, the stress of inflation, whatever it is, we all have trouble sleeping. I'm included in that. But let me tell you what I found to help me sleep better. And I'm telling you, this stuff works for me. It's not a drug. It's not a prescription. It's a cream. And I put it on at bedtime and it's simple. And let me tell you something. I was a total skeptic, but after trying it once, I was amazed that it really works. I sleep so much better. The company is Sleep Cream. They use all natural CBD combined with the finest essential oils. They have different scents that I really like, the rose in particular. So I just put it on before turning in for the evening. I usually put it on the bottoms of my feet or the insides of my forearms, and that's what works best for me. And then within minutes, I feel relaxed and my body is allowed to do what it's supposed to do, which is go to sleep. You can find them at sleepcream.com, SLEEPCREME.com. Just try Sleep Cream for a couple nights. See if it works for you as well as it does for me. And if you don't experience better sleep, Sleep Cream will refund your purchase, guaranteed. You don't even have to return anything. Go to sleepcream.com. That's sleepcream.com with cream spelled CREME.com. And for the next few weeks, use the code GAMEDAY at checkout to save $20 off your first order. That's GAMEDAY at checkout. All one word, GAMEDAY, for $20 in savings. Are you ready for the best sleep ever? Sleep, CREME.com. Malcolm, I am so appreciative of you being here. I know you went through a travel nightmare in the last 24 hours. So kudos to you for showing up. We've been trying to do this for a long time. I've been following you on X for a long time, and you are a fascinating follow. There are a lot of aspects to your career, your personality, your point of view. Where does it start? Like, what is the basis for just kind of where you are in life right now? I know you're an MMA fighter, but what's the foundation for you?
Again, as hard as it is for you to pinpoint something, it's even harder for me I would honestly say, my foundation starts about where a lot of people like me, young Black boys that grew up in the heyday of the 90s is. And that's sort of around a family and, just with God and, in physical activity, being involved in the community. And of course, just a lot of hard work. That's something that oftentimes isn't really seen in our community, especially nowadays, just because of, what you got coming up and, the advent of hip hop and the decline of, parenting and whatnot. But those of us that were raised by, two working class families, we understood, what it meant to just sort of put the nose to the grindstone, master any and everything that was set before you. The whole play, play until the street lights come out on, don't come out. You get a lot of free time and you learn a lot of things. And, you interact with a lot of people and your life is better for it. And so that's sort of the approach when it comes to career, when it comes to learning about several different aspects of politics, science. Again, my main career is in science, obviously, but then I inherited a family business. So I'm actually a business owner and, I do a lot of handsy artisan work, but then at the same time, you also have to be wary of politics and understand what's going on in the political landscape. So all of those things just sort of come together to create this, this person that you see before you. And now at the same time, I'm also physically inclined. I spent the whole lifetime in sports. So that's really what led me to, after a football career, go into mixed martial arts, because I'm, it's a little bit more of an older man sport. I'm not going to say it's like super, it's a super old man sport, but 30s to 40s, those are typically heyday. But that's where I'm at now. I'm kind of cresting into that, and I found something else that just sort of keeps me moving forward. And I think that that's what a lot of people need and a lot of people look for, and that's really what's built me into who I am today. Hard work, understanding, being talented, being a Swiss Army knife of a person.
Yeah, that's a great term, and that's how. Yeah, that's apropos given everything I've seen of you. The hard work. See, to me, you embody. I hope this is, and I'm going to sound like Jen Psaki when she was talking to Doug Emhoff, but you, to me, embody masculinity. Not only because of your physical strength, but because the responsibility you take for the family business, for having a political point of view, for doing research, for working hard. All of those things, to me, are what, and somehow we've gotten into this debate in America about what masculinity really is. So what do you make of that? Why are we now identifying different types of masculinity instead of letting just people be who they are, the way that they want to be?
Well, I think us growing up in the 90s, then getting to experience the early growing pains of the 2000s. I know, again, it's a different range for you as well, but not that different. You can't be but like 5 years older than me, honestly, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
See, I was, like I said, my mama taught me manners. I understand, and I know the do's and the don'ts there. But not to get too far into a tangent. I know, right? But it's like, not to get too far into a tangent, but we grew up in such a transitory period where we moved from the whole working class, where it was, everything was very manual labor-esque, to a more white collar future where everything started to become a little bit more automated. You didn't need near as many, hard hats on the construction site. You didn't need near as many hands in the factory, except for somebody to work a machine. A lot of these things were male dominated. A lot of these things, men would spend 60-70% of their time doing. And, then building homes, a lot of the pastimes, we started to outsource that to, specialists instead of, men being generalists. And it's like the necessity for men to build a skill set that used to be a no negotiations baseline skill set for life suddenly became negotiable. And so because of that, men lost their purpose. Boys grew up, you didn't have fathers necessarily saying, okay, well, you got to learn carpentry, you got to learn the electrical work. I just installed smart lighting in my home, having to go into the wiring, turn the breakers off and do all that stuff. Most men my age, I'm 30, most guys my age now would not even dare. They just pick up the phone, call the electrician and get price gouged. to
Yeah.
do something like that. And so
Yep.
it's like when you don't have those skill sets, when you don't like endeavor to learn those things and get to the point where you hit the bumps, you hit the ups and downs, but then you get the experience fortitude, you get to learn like all of the parts of the process of learning a skill, including the good, the bad, the achievement, and all of that. Then you miss out on a crucial part of masculinity. So now you've got a lot of men that don't know how to actually be men as it's been defined to us by the previous generations, the baby boomers and the greatest generation and all of that. And so now they're at a point where it's like, well, I mean, we still want to be men, but how do we be men? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
that's a good question. So then in comes academics and, the intelligentsia. And, then you have the feminist agenda and all of these things that start saying, oh, well, don't worry. We'll define how to be men for you. We'll tell you how to do it. And, being a man means sometimes sitting to pee. Sometimes it means being sensitive and, crying in front of your woman. Sometimes being a man means not being afraid to wear pink or put on the dress or paint your nails. Real men aren't, don't worry about that. And then, before it's like, well, real men allow other men to do what they want with their wives because, of course, you're masculine, right? You're secure in your masculinity. And, it just turns into this weird circular sphere of, well, what is a man? And, we're asking the same people that can't even define what a woman is to tell us what being a man means. And so now you're getting to that point where you have men just saying anything goes. Okay, well, this is the masculinity. This is masculinity. This is masculinity. And there's a more insidious purpose behind it because, of course, the less men that you have, the less strong, like actual, well-rounded men that have this bone of leadership, that have this grit, this determination, this level of fortitude, the less of those that you have around, the easier it is for structures and extra familial entities like school, government, and, all of these other organizations to come in and infiltrate and control your family. The more control they have, the less they have to worry about. You don't have to worry about pushback at a school board when there are no fathers that are, or the fathers that are there are too afraid to stand up because, of course, they're sitting with their legs crossed because that's what they've been told that masculinity, I mean, like really crossed like that. Like, that's what they've been told masculinity is. You don't have to worry about them standing up and saying, hey, now, that's not what you're going to teach my son. You don't,
Right.
That doesn't come. So it's a twofold purpose. We've displaced men and, that can happen in a lot of ways. We've seen that in the Black community. Men were displaced by a lot of the welfare systems in the whole Great Society program. And like a lot of people say, it started with the New Deal. It actually started with the Great Society, but men were displaced and then women were incentivized to raise kids without men. And then when you have the purpose of men dwindling because of, technological advancement without heed for what men actually do or without any thought, then, well, guess what? Now you got boys growing up without fathers. Now you got a lot of boys that are of masculine age and don't know what to actually do. And we saw this several times in history. A lot of people don't remember, but we actually saw this post Weimar Germany back during, the Hitler era, where most of the grown men were taken out of the house to go fight the war. And then you had a lot of street urchins, these young boys running around with nothing to do, and crime shot up. A lot of abuse shot up, which then necessitated the need for more policing. So it's like you have situations like that throughout history. And it always happens again and again where, I kind of think of it as society gets too big for its britches too fast. Like, there's no infrastructure to contain the human impacts of what's happening when it comes to advancing.
I love the good folks at besthotgrill.com. And with football being back, so is tailgating. Whether it's Friday Night Lights, Saturday College, Pro Sundays, Solaire Tailgate, infrared grills, well, they set up super fast. They heat up super quickly. I mean, it takes 3 minutes to get to searing hot temperatures. These are just like the big backyard Solaires. A Solaire grill will make you the master of the tailgate with the juiciest, most flavorful food in the parking lot. This thing is amazing, folks. And the fast grilling times, well, they leave you more time to enjoy the pregame festivities. They also cool down really fast, so you're not going to miss a minute of the game. The USA-made Solaire Anywhere, Everywhere, and All About infrared grills are portable. They're perfect for any grilling on the go. I'm talking about a picnic, camping, RVs, boating, but especially tailgating. Amaze your tailgating friends with the great food you grill with your Solaire infrared grill. Learn more about these fantastic grills. I've got one. I love it. I swear by it. And Solaire's try before you buy demo rental program at besthotgrill.com. That's besthotgrill.com, besthotgrill.com. Well, you talked about this sort of nefarious underpinning for trying to take men out of the equation. And in many ways, the things you describe, some of the offshoots are that women have to rely more on the government for handouts, for welfare, for unemployment, for whatever, to take care of their kids at school, for school meal programs, all of those things that were traditionally just provided by the family and or the church and or the neighborhood. And now you have to rely on the government. And what does that do? It makes the government bigger, and the bigger the government gets, the smaller the individual gets. And why not try to minimize men first? Because they are genetically, physically, biologically, the more powerful of the two. So that is a fascinating look at it. But you've persisted. You have not taken any of the bait. And can we attribute that just to your upbringing?
Yeah, I was raised by boomers. So, like I said, again, while I'm actually on the closer side, I'm actually age-wise closer to a Zoomer, really, 30, where I think like the oldest Zoomer's like 26. I'm actually closer to a Gen Z person, but I was raised by baby boomers. So, there's that whole generational schism. So, yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit closer to a Gen Xer in sort of mentality in a lot of ways. But, I've definitely persisted.
Well, you have. I was looking through and people should follow you on X, by the way, because it's a really good follow, at Malcolm Flex, and there's a Malcolm _Flex 48. So, because there are a lot of Malcolm Flexes on X, but you're the legit one.
I was one of the first ones.
I love this one. I love this. You posted this about 16 hours ago, it says. You write, look, I'm probably the lone ranger on this point within the conservative side, but not having the government tell people what to do with their bodies or kids works two ways. First step here is removing the incentive of the government, doctors, and schools to unilaterally convince your kids that they should do this and arrest the parent for stopping it. The rest of this fix is cultural and cleaning up the education system and medical systems, respectively, enforcing informed consent with the understanding of the lack of capacity children have. It's either this or vote for Kamala, who will make it worse. Be my guest if that's the goal. And this was in response to a headline, Parents Sue Over Teens' Social Gender Transition They Say Was Kept From Them. So this is part of this insidiousness to me that you spoke of, where so much of it, I can't believe it's become this prevalent in the education system, Malcolm, that we're learning all these new invented pronouns. The kids are being told they can be whatever they want to be, that they might be born in the wrong body. And these are kids. They don't have fully developed brains. And many times they're spending more time at school than they are at home. And then to go behind a parent's back and not allow a parent to know that your kid has, chosen different pronouns at school, I find this criminal. How has this happened? They say things happen slowly and then fast. We're at the fast moment right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we definitely, we finished climbing the ladder. We're at the top and we've already started going down the slip and slide, or I guess the slide really. Gosh, slip and slide.
Yeah.
That was so long ago, dog. The slip and slide.
The slip and slide?
I know.
Yeah.
Like you don't see kids.
I saw one in my neighborhood about a month ago. They're still out there.
It's great, isn't it? But that's the thing, is that we get to these points where, again, people conspiring against you, and I'm not necessarily the conspiracy theorist type. I know that's got sort of, it's got a couple of connotations, a positive and negative. I don't like to do that because it's so hard to prove it, but I'll just say this to play devil's advocate. If you have people conspiring against you, normally when things are going slow, they're setting up the groundwork. There's a lot of legislation. There are a lot of rules with benign names, definitions, and, sort of terminology that's a little bit nebulous, that might be a little, ill-defined, that are passed that give, more power to medical institutions or, educators. And on its face, it looks good.
Right.
This is this is sort of that legalese game. Lawyers go to law school for a reason, and they don't just go there just to learn, different rulings and statutes. They learn how to play with language, linguistics, and, verbiage. There's a whole field of NLP.
Yeah.
So they set these laws up using these terminologies and things that give them a little bit more wiggle room and power. And then when you see things go fast, it's because usually you'll get somebody in office, you'll get somebody that's in a position of power or leadership. And, that's happening more as my generation ages into power, because we're less subtle than the prior generations. You see this even in the Biden administration. Democrats of the old days were a lot more, they had more tact. They were very, I won't say they were demure, but just as the young folks say, but they were way more calculating, and they moved a lot slower. Well, you get somebody in that doesn't have that same level of tact, and they realize, hey, I've got this level of power to make this a sweeping ruling. Next thing you know, they're coming out passing a bill or putting forth an edict, as it so happens in a lot of these organizations and governing bodies that say, hey, we can now tell your kids this, and if you don't like it, guess what? You can be arrested. Well, it's like, whoa. We thought that you guys would just design a curriculum and you would have more freedom to educate our kids in a way that might, be more tailored to them. Well, the devil's in the details. They didn't tell you that tailored to them basically means tailored to, spending one-on-one time with them, making their minds more malleable, and teaching them all of these other off-curriculum topics. And so long as they either score good on the test scores, or they're moved to a special program where their test scores don't count, nobody knows anything about it. And that's what the school does a lot. And you see this also in the medical system. Typically in the medical system, they'll have these, you'll have these boards and these organizations, they'll negotiate for having these doctors, have certain levels of freedom to make judgment calls. And they've got a team, an army of lawyers behind them. So guess what? If you try to sue them, you're, hey, how much money do you have and how much time do you have? And do you have a law firm that's willing to, chase that bone, however long however long that it's just drugged down the road? Because that's pretty much what you run into there. But that was in response to something that Billboard Chris had actually posted, where Trump came out and said that he had wanted to make sure that parents had input and rights in whether or not their kids transitioned. And now, make no mistake about it, I understand that we've seen a lot of the issues with this whole this trans agenda. But at the same time, just like with the vaccine, just like with, people should have the ability to willingly take the vaccine and should not have been compelled by government edict to take it.
Correct.
You still have to leave the door open to people that say, hey, I think that I want to do this. Let me do this. You can't just have government say, no, you can't do this, because now you're still having government, tell people what they can and can't do with their bodies. And that can easily lay the groundwork for government. If the government figures out, hey, we can tell people that they can't do this, and, we don't really necessarily have a legal basis, because it's not like, it's illegal or anything, but we can tell people that they can't do this, that doesn't fall within the jurisdiction of legal or illegal. Well, we can tell people that they can do things. So that's why I said, I thought that was the right move by Trump. And listen, the fix is cultural. If you want to see less of this trans agenda, if you want to see less of it in the media, if you want to see, all of these kids that are being confused and told that they're this gender or they're that gender, or that they're technical, there's some technical rainbow, other kin, whatever on the spectrum, then you have to essentially work with them and do it on a cultural level. You can't do it on a legislative level, because as we've seen, law is flawed. The law can be, be manipulated by anybody that's got the cojones and the mental acumen to do so. And so that's why I'm like, I don't get why y'all are freaking out, guys. Like, look, let Trump cook, just as the young people say, let him cook, because this is the right call here. You want a future, you want to put a future where you're not slipping into pitfalls. You want a future where, there's as much freedom of the individual to do what they need, and then that has good social controls. But see, that segment of the right doesn't quite get that. They get it. At the same time, I guess they don't want it. They want things to be legislated.
Kind of cut and dried and boxed off. And, that one is such an interesting topic. But, I live here in Tim Walls's Minnesota, and I can tell you, it's become a gender affirming care sort of sanctuary state. And that is troubling because we're talking about little kids here who we've seen a number of kids who transitioned medically, who went on to regret it. We're not just talking about changing pronouns now. We're talking about drugs. We're talking about surgeries. And at a young age where their brain isn't fully developed. I mean, I saw some anchor on MSNBC saying, but don't you want the kids to be happy? Well, my kids, when they were growing up, what would have made them happy? Sitting around watching TV, playing video games all day and eating sugar. That would have made them happy. Would that have made them healthy, productive humans? Hell no. And so, no, we didn't allow just what they thought would make them happy. And oftentimes these kids are just confused, and we've been up and down this topic, but I will get into this. So Kamala Harris is having some issues with Black men. And she went on with Charlemagne the God, and she's trying to correct this now. And she's putting out these, hey, we're going to downgrade the criminalization of pot, and we're going to give you these forgivable loans, i.e., I'm giving you cash, $20,000 to start a business, no matter what that business might be. What do you make of her approach? At this point, we're 3 weeks out, and she's trying to find her way back to this group of Black men. How do you see it?
Well, hey, nice of you to come by and visit us a little bit closer to the end of the election after you pretty much put on every different accent under the sun other than the one that would have been passable. But listen, I'm a part of a lot of I guess I wouldn't say a part of, but I've got friends in a lot of different Black groups that are lean and are openly conservative. Again, I've got friends within the Hotep movement, even though that's sort of on the downswing. I've got friends within the FBA movement, the Foundational Black American movement, and I understand their point of view, although they push for reparations, but they are still very conservative at their base. But, I've got friends in all of these different groups. And the one thing that they say is, we don't want no Kamala Harris. And that's verbatim. We don't want no Kamala Harris because, number one, Kamala Harris spent a majority of her career cutting her teeth on them, locking up Black men for petty drug offenses, keeping them well beyond their prison stay to use them for free labor for the state of California. She has essentially made her living off of making sure that innocent or at some point, men that were caught with petty amounts of drugs, whether or not you like drugs or not, whether or not you believe that drugs should be outlawed and that all drug offenders should be cast into the sea or not, she made her career off of keeping these men in jail and incarcerated. And so now, when you come to us and say, hey, guess what? We're going to give you forgivable, business loans, and we're going to downgrade drug offenses. Well, shoot, that runs afoul of the whole basis of what made you. So it's like, I understand people can grow, people can change and all that. And this is not me being pro Kamala, because I'm about as anti-Kamala Harris as can be. But at the same time, I'm just, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt here. This is, assuming that, yeah, she changed. She had this epiphany and said, maybe Black men, what I did was wrong. People can change, but they can't change that much, especially when they've never quite been reprimanded
by it. Pretty dramatic change.
Mm-hmm. And so at this point, they're throwing anything that they can against the wall to see what sticks. Yeah, she's basically recreating the Biden playbook of how Biden tried to bribe the young people by saying, oh, student loan forgiveness. Guess what? We're going to forgive your student loans if you let us in. She's doing whatever she can. And, she already did this with Trump's tax on, no tax on tips. She basically said, yeah, that's no tax on tips. That's a good idea. Thanks, Trump. but you're also still evil. You're also
Yeah.
still Cheeto Man Drumpler or whatever, So it
Yeah.
doesn't quite,
Yeah.
it doesn't hit. Like I said, this admin, I don't envy her staffers because they've had some of the hardest, aside from dodging things being thrown at her, when she's in those drunken fits of rage, which I've heard that she does very often. She actually throws in the staffers. That's not on the record.
Let me just stop you right there, because this is an interesting little aspect. I mean, I hear this again and again, and the jokes about, hey, come on our show, Kamala, we'll have some wine waiting for you. Or, these references to her being, overindulging on alcohol. What have you heard? Because I don't think a lot of people have picked up on this yet. Hey, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance and you've had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars, you might want to take a look at Share Right. Healthcare done the right way. At Share Right, you're not just a number, you're part of a caring community. And forget about paying excessive premiums. With Share Right, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. Now, think about what you could do with all those savings. But it's more than just savings. ShareRight ensures you have access to the care you deserve precisely when you need it. From routine checkups to unexpected emergencies, with ShareRight, your healthcare is their top priority. Empower yourself today by taking control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Tafoya to learn more and see how much you can save. Visit ShareRight, ShareRight.org/Tafoya. That's shareright.org/TAFOYA for healthcare done the right way. Let me just stop you right there, because this is an interesting little aspect. I mean, I hear this again and again, and the jokes about, hey, come on our show, Kamala, we'll have some wine waiting for you. Or, these references to her being, overindulging on alcohol. Mm-hmm. What have you heard? Because I don't think a lot of people have picked up on this yet.
I've definitely heard that Kamala Harris, like during most of her time in the Biden administration, was liquored up, if you will. She enjoyed the libations. If we,
and you're getting this from good sources. You're getting this from good sources.
I am. The Shade War Chronicles. I definitely, that's all I'll say. You can look up Shade War. You might find out a little bit more about that one. But, I definitely think that there is some merit to the fact that Kamala Harris spent quite a bit of time drunk. And, it's just, if you look at when she did her interviews, especially when she was, still operating as a arm of the Biden administration, before she basically split off on her own, a lot of her talks were sort of Dr. Seuss nursery rhymes. Gun crime is bad because crime is bad.
No.
And guns are also bad. So when you put the two together, it's bad. Like, you just have to think like, okay, this woman went to law school. Like we just talked about lawyers and how lawyers are incredibly, they understand linguistics. They're very high when it comes to understanding verbal IQ, talking, speaking, all of that. So if this is a woman that's essentially spent most of her life positioning herself to essentially benefit, we're not talking about a dumb woman. Like I get that, the line in conservative media is that, yeah, Kamala Harris is stupid. And I'm not saying that she might not be personally stupid, because, you can have a lot of dumb, smart people. But this is somebody that's been calculated.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know some very smart, dumb people, or very dumb, smart people. I've got a lot of them in my life.
Yeah. So to go to that point, I mean, what's the smartest thing you can do when you know that what you really believe is very unpopular, and you don't want to have to talk about what you really believe, and you're in a situation that you might not like? Because keep in mind, remember, she did not like Joe Biden. During the Democratic primary, they had it out. They were very vicious towards one another, and the Jill Biden. I guess I can say this. Jill Biden really was calling a lot of the shots at that point. I think that's a little bit more, pronounced now that, maybe Joe Biden was channeling Woodrow Wilson's wife a little bit. But, you know, she was calling a lot of shots. She did not like Kamala Harris. I think Jen Psaki didn't like Kamala Harris. They were very adversarial, so she probably liquored up. You know, this isn't like some bold, you know, prediction, or this isn't like some bold statement. Like, I'm pretty sure if you're an alcoholic, what are you going to do when you're at a time of high stress? Drink, right? And so she's been drunk for a lot of those times that she's been on shows, doing statements, interviews, and whatnot. And I mean, you don't have to believe me.
Remember, this is
this is gossip hour. But I'm gossiping. I'm not, and don't take this as
but
gospel.
You know what? It's no, but there's been a lot of that, so I'm curious. But so you said, no way in hell do you want Kamala Harris in the White House. Number one, you talked about her jailing a bunch of men for weed and keeping them in prison. What are a couple other main reasons that you don't want her there?
Well, she's also extremely, you know, when we look at her policy on the truancy, where she literally laughed about locking up mothers, that, you know, let's be honest, we just had a conversation of, you know, how they took men out of the home. And essentially a side effect of that was keeping the mothers working nonstop. And, you know, because again, now they've got to still make an income, and in California prices are going up, right? So she laughed about that. That just speaks to me as a very, you know, I hate saying evil, but that's a very evil person if you can laugh about coming and bringing cops to threaten a mom whose kid essentially isn't being raised by a dad, number one, and is missing school. That's evil. Then number two, she has no economic policy. I don't think we've even necessarily seen I don't think she said opportunity zones. Her branding's all over the place, but whatever she's calling it, like, you know, I don't think we've seen the core tenets of that. And we've already seen part of her work with the Biden administration. So I gotta be honest. I don't believe that she can necessarily do anything any better. Number three, she's literally a vacuous puppet of the same uniparty that we've seen that essentially was angrily scratching at their faces, clawing at anything they could to get on Donald Trump, that wanted Hillary Clinton, you know, number one, prime bomb Iran. Hillary Clinton, we're going to set up a no-fly zone over there in Syria. And like, that's who we're voting for. We're not voting for necessarily Kamala Harris. We're voting for the system that props her up. They could they could have did whatever. And that goes kind of back to where I say, like, hey, this person is, you know, she's positioned herself to be the next runner-up in that system, you know, the next lottery candidate. They could have used anybody. They just didn't want to use their good people.
That's the thing. Hey. And it really is. And so then they throw out all these scary words: Hitler, fascism, white supremacists, Christian white nationalist, everything they can. There's been the lawfare. There've been, you know, a couple of assassination attempts that they haven't seemed to be too disappointed in. I'm saying the Democrats. And none of that really seems, I mean, it's certainly working on some people, but it's not driving everyone away. So how do you feel about supporting the other side? Or is this just the lesser of two evils in your mind?
No, it's not the lesser of two evils. I think that in this game that we're playing, where it's like one side is accelerating towards a ultimate end, that being the Democrat uniparty, like they're accelerating us to a point where, you know, we're very close to the brink. You know, I think the ledge is crumbling, where, you know, financially, geopolitically, you know, even socially, they've started to fray away at, you know, social cohesion. And so it's like whether or not it's supporting the lesser of two evils, whether or not I believe Trump is the lesser of two evils. I actually think Trump is a pretty good, you know, president. I think I think he learned a lot his first term that he wasn't able to do. But I think that, again, his heart's in the right place insofar as he wants to do what's going to get people to like him. He wants to build legacy. When you want to do something like that, when you're not motivated by money, you actually do care about the outcome. Most Democrats are, you know, they don't care about the outcome because they're paid by a lot of NGOs, special interest groups, and all of these other organizations that could care less if the United States burned, because they've got havens all over the rest of the world. And these Democrats think that if they just play along, then they'll be spared from the flames. Well, no, not really. when the whole nation is under attack, when, Russia or China or whoever that you've been, essentially messing with and declaring quiet warfare with finally says, hey, we have a chance to take out this albatross essentially around the neck of world peace. Let's go ahead and do it. Well, you're not going to be safe no matter how much money, no matter how many private guards you have, but they don't think that way. And so to answer your question a little bit more directly, I think Trump is more than just the lesser two evils, even though if you want to go that way, you can say voting for Trump gives you about 4 more years of status quo insofar as, American exceptionalism. We're very, we start, rising up a little bit more. We step away from the ledge. We get to the point where we have 4 years of breathing room. Then we can decide what to do. I think that that's still a good way,
Right.
but I think that Trump wants to do a little bit more. I think he wants the economy to boom. I think he got a taste of that whole Jim Cramer segment where he said, these are the best numbers of our lives. And, proving Obama wrong when he said that you couldn't, the GDP would never get to where it got under Trump. And, that you couldn't bring those jobs, those manufacturing jobs that we shipped overseas back. I think he loved that. I think he loved the accolades he got walking across the DMZ after calling Kim Jong-un Little Rocket Man. And so I feel like his heart's in the right place. And he's learned a little bit more. He's got better advisors. He's got better help. I wasn't a super JD Vance fan, but he's grown on me, and he's a very good,
he's grown on me too. I thought his debate performance against Tim Walz was remarkable. And I'm sure you saw it the other day when he called out Martha Raddatz on ABC News, as she said, it's only been a handful of apartment complexes that have been taken over by Venezuelan gangs. And he said, do you hear yourself? I mean, he's been great. Only just a couple of Venezuelan gangs, no worries.
Exactly.
How many do there have to be, Martha?
Exactly. But you see that, and it brings a little bit of hope to you, because you're like, man, we have a decent secession plan here. 4 years of Trump, he can, Trump can go in. Maybe some of the things he's going to say and do are going to be a little unpopular. Again, reversing the migrant crisis is already going to be unpopular, whichever way, whether or not you go the amnesty route, which I don't think he will, or you go the deportation route. Again, there's going to be some visceral images, but he can do a lot of the unpopular stuff.
Sure.
But it buys you 4 more years to then figure out what the heck are we going to do now. And I think that some of the up and comers in the Republican Party, maybe at that point, the Democrats get their heads straight and they move a little bit more back to the party of JFK. I don't think they will, but maybe they do, because again, 4 years, a lot of the dynastic lever pullers are old. So they might actually, you might see a new Democratic Party if some of those people shuffle off the moral coil. Not that I want that to happen, but, again, that could be a very real possibility. So, you got to think.
You have delivered on, Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. See, that's the thing. We do need to think long term, because every one of our adversaries all over the world, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, they have the long game in mind. Mm-hmm. We can't just sit here and be short-term happiness people. We got to think about the country as a whole and the things that we stand for and the things that we cherish, and hold fast to those and preserve those. And I have no confidence, no faith that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will do that. Tim Walz is a buddy of China. He is let me tell you, living in his state, it's not pretty. And I wish more people would know this. Don't let him fool you. You have not disappointed, because listen, for people who are not yet following you, but are going to go find you on X, Malcolm_Flex48, gaming, guns, and gains, heavyweight MMA fighter, 6'5", 255, striking specialist, and verbal pugilist. You have not disappointed on the verbal pugilist aspect of your description, Malcolm.
I've had a lot of practice. Can you believe that I actually wasn't very good at speaking? Once upon a time, I actually was terrible at it. So it happens, the more you do.
The more you do and the more you practice and the harder you work. It's funny how lucky you get when you work hard. What a treat to talk to you. And I hope we can do it again, because there's a lot that we didn't even begin to get to. We just started to scratch the surface. But I take it from our conversation that you're a definite no on Kamala and a definite yes on Trump. And you're not real thrilled with this last minute little bit of fairy dust that Kamala's trying to throw around her campaign.
That is exactly it. No, Kamala, you gotta come with it a little bit more. Not that it's gonna help you, but I just don't think, speaking for the normies.
Speaking for the normies, I hope there are enough normies, Malcolm. I really do. What a treat to talk to you. I admire your courage and your willingness to come on after a hell of a travel night. I definitely want to do it again. He is Malcolm X. Find him at Malcolm. I said Malcolm X. Malcolm Flex. I knew that would happen at one point.
It worked.
Yeah, see, it worked. At Malcolm_Flex48. And you will see him there. And I can't recommend the follow enough. As always, I like to tell my listeners, my viewers, be brave, do a little good today, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Malcolm.